guys, so we are in chapter 7 for sticky notes today. We are on page 201 and we're talking about cell transport in chapter 7. Okay, we just finished talking about all the different organelles that can be found inside of a cell, and one of the most interesting organelles is the cell membrane. We talked about how it has made up of 2 layers of lipids that face outward from one another and create a lipid membrane that surrounds the cell. So this chapter is dedicated to how things can move in and out of the cell. That's what cell transport means. One of the simplest things that can happen inside of a cell and outside of a cell is diffusion. Diffusion is molecules going from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So you can see the diagram down here. We have 2 different, let's say, inks, and they're both in high concentration in their own areas. And over time, they will disperse and spread out to the lowest concentration possible. Okay, this is known as diffusion. There's lots of real life examples of diffusion, so you can read about some of them in the text, or you could look up some on my computer, but you should know what diffusion is and be able to give me some examples. Then we're going to turn the page to page 202, and we'll talk about other types of diffusion, of which some of them the molecules are too big to go straight through the cell membrane. So sometimes they need special proteins to travel through the cell membrane. So for example, a carrier protein or a channel protein help large molecules move through the cell membrane. So make sure you read about both carrier and channel proteins and be able to tell me what the difference is. And because these are helping things get across the cell membrane, this is known as facilitated diffusion. It's like they're facilitating some help, okay? Now water gets its own special name when it goes across the cell membrane, and we call that osmosis. It's only water that we refer to that term as. Water is also going to always go from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration, okay, osmosis. So do an image search on osmosis. There's lots of different pictures out there that kind of explain the process of osmosis, of water moving in and out of cells, and see how it works, okay. All right, now all of these examples so far are examples of something called passive transport. Passive means it doesn't require any energy from the cell to complete these processes. It can just move from areas of high concentration to low, kind of like letting the air of a tire. There's no work that has to occur there. There are 3 special circumstances in which a cell can have this passive diffusion happening. They are referred to as isotonic, hypotonic, and hypertonic. And it's a situation where you put a cell inside of a solution that has a greater concentration, a lower concentration, or an equal concentration. Take a second and think of these 3 prefixes. Which one matches up with equal, which one matches up with greater, and which one matches up with less than. And that'll help you understand these terms quite a bit. Okay. In each of these situations, water is going to move in and out of the cell through osmosis. So water could move equally in and out of the cell, and the cell will remain the same size. We can have more water coming into the cell than out because there's concentration inside the cell that needs more water. So the cell will begin to swell. Or we can have water leaving the cell at a greater amount, so the cell can begin to wither. You can actually drink so much water that you can pop your own cells because they absorb too much water. You can also drink so little water that you can die of dehydration where your cells wither up. All of these are examples of passive transport. It still takes no energy for the cells to complete these processes. But some processes do require energy, and this is called active transport. Active transport is transporting materials against the concentration gradient. So cells are bringing molecules from an area of low concentration and pushing it towards high concentration. For example, when you pump up a tire, it does take work to move that low pressure air outside into a high pressure situation inside of the tire, okay? Active transport. There are several different types of active transport. The first is that the cell can pump items in. They can use proteins again, but instead of just allowing those proteins to carry and to channel items through, they're going to pump against the concentration gradient. They're going to push molecules from areas of low concentration high concentration. That takes energy, okay? Then we also have a situation that is exocytosis and endocytosis. This is when you have a really big molecule that needs to go into a cell like this or out of a cell. And that's kind of like the cell membrane can rearrange its shape and capture or burp out really large molecules. So make sure you take a look at endocytosis and exocytosis. We're finishing up on page 207 there with the end of this section on cell transport. We'll be doing a quick lab to model the cell membrane in class, and we'll be doing a lot of practice problems to see if we understand the difference between passive and active transport and what the different types of each are. All right, thanks a lot.